wonderful to see you this morning. It's my pleasure to introduce the speaker for today's Foundation Memorial Lecture, and that being Andrew Kirby. If you had a look at his profile, you would note that he made a very clear choice of important educational institutions that he decided to attend. One being Harvard Business School, another one University of Cape Town, and Grey High School, which effectively, I think we all understand is on a par. Andrew, being a fifth generation, old Grey, was very careful and meticulous in ensuring that any institution he went to after the Grey was on a par. So, great choices, Andrew. Well done. As you would have seen, Andrew's had a very illustrious career, starting out with Anglo-American, then BMW, and then Toyota, culminating with him President, CEO, and Chairman of Toyota South Africa. I think probably a very important accolade is not only has he accomplished those things, but as a leader, being very highly regarded. And in 2022, I'm really aging myself. 2022 was named South African Business Person of the Year, which I think is an accolade very, very few can claim to have achieved. So it's a great pleasure and honor for us to have you with us today, and we're really looking forward to your address. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and appreciate that warm introduction. Good morning, everyone. It's really a privilege to be here. Apart from yesterday, this is the first time I've been back in these halls since 1981, so it's really a memorable experience and opportunity for me. Just some further details. I'm married to my beautiful wife. I have 3 children. My 2 eldest are married, living in the Western Cape. My eldest has 2 children, so I'm a grandfather. And my son is about to be married a little bit later in the year, so I feel very, very blessed. Just a little bit of detail around my heritage at the grade. So I only did 1.5 years in grade 8 and a half of grade 9, 1981, and then my parents moved to Pretoria and I finished my high school in Pretoria. My father, Dave Kirby, who's with us today, he went to grade, was boarded from grade 7 all the way through, matriculated in 1958. Prefect, first in cricket athletics. I didn't quite achieve those accolades. And my grandfather coincidentally did the same thing I did. A few years at Grey and finished at Pretoria Boys High. My great-grandfather, Humphrey Kirby, was born in 1879, also came to Grey in the late 1890s. And his father, George Kirby, born in 1837, went to Grey. Of course, that facility wasn't here. Grey was only, this facility was only built in stage a little bit later, so went to the original Grey on the hill. So I have a tremendous heritage, legacy at Grey. In addition to that, my wife's father, my father-in-law, also went to Grey. He matriculated in 1957, and my brother-in-law. So a really strong heritage at Grey. I'm a little bit sad that my son wasn't able to come to Grey. Unfortunately, he lived a little bit far away, but that's something that I was certainly disappointed about. So in the very kind introduction, Andrew mentioned that I've certainly had opportunities of moving around. I've lived in the United States with my family. I came back to South Africa. That was a very decisive decision I took. And then moved, had the opportunity to go and work in Japan with my family as well. And so I had the opportunity of having a West and Eastern experience during my career, and certainly it's molded a lot of my thinking around diversity and different management styles. I've had a couple of very tough and challenging experiences since I took over this role in 2016. And I think we all agree that globally the levels of uncertainty have increased. We have a lot more disruptions. The pace of change is accelerating. At the same time, you add that layer of complexity that comes from living and working and in South Africa. And we certainly have a lot more challenges, setbacks, disruptions to deal with than we did 10 to 15 years ago. So I think one of the key questions is, how do we respond to these challenges? What are the types of approaches that we can take? And I want to share just 2 stories with you this morning that shed a little bit of light on some of my thinking around that. My first story is about a disaster that we experienced at Aotearoa, South Africa. So for a little bit of quick background, we have 3 manufacturing sites. Excuse me, I'm just trying to make sure I do this correctly. This is not displayed. Might need some technical support. Okay, thank you. Sorry, sorted. Sorry, thank you. So we have 3 sites. Our head office is in Sandton. We have a parcel distribution warehouse in Kempton Park, and our manufacturing facilities is in Durban, just south of the Durban city. We produce about 190,000 vehicles. We export to 75 countries around the world, to all of Africa, West Africa. But really importantly, we have a supply chain that's reliant on our operations. So our component suppliers, service providers, a lot of people dedicated to operations, and obviously upstream as well with our dealers. So the community around our operations is fairly extensive. And the reason this is important is it gives some context to what we experienced on the 12th of April 2022. We had significant rainfall in KwaZulu-Natal over a period of 24 hours of 91 millimeters, and then followed by 300 millimeters. And we ended up with some really significant rainfall that flowed down into the South Basin and had horrific impacts on the entire environment. It was later reported that 448 people lost their lives, 40,000 people were displaced, and more than 12,000 homes were destroyed or severely damaged. Initially, we were quite optimistic that our plant would be unscaled, but later on it turned out certainly not to be true. What happened was there was a 1 in 50-year rainfall in the coastal area where we were located, and 1 in 200-year rainfall in the inland catchment area. And unfortunately, there was a dam that could not contain the flow of water from the inland catchment area, and they designed into the dam wall where there were gates, fuse gates that were designed to tip if the flow of water exceeded a certain level. And unfortunately, that is what happened. So we had a dam that's located just more than 40 kilometers away, and that emptied almost 80% of its capacity down the Mlazi River, reached the banks, and flooded the entire South Basin. I'll carry on. It's not important. So, what happened is on the morning of the 12th of April, the situation was that we were good to go, good to operate. We'd already cancelled night shift. We recognized that people wouldn't be able to come to work. But the next morning we were okay, and within 45 minutes we suddenly went from 0.6 to 1.8 meters in mud over the entire area. Our vehicles were submerged, all our machinery, our IT equipment, offices, everything. So it was a massive event for us, and something that we could certainly never ever have forecast. This is just a video of the dam emptying its contents down the Mlazi River, and of course it was completely dry within a couple of hours. You can see here how the flood impacted all the areas around us. It came down through the bank, hit an empty container yard. There were empty containers floating down the N2, and it submerged all our operations. And unfortunately, one of the complications was that the fine mud from the dam then got into all our machinery. And you can see pictures of just how extensive it is. All our production operations were covered, complete vehicles, partly produced vehicles, of course, covered, and it was essential chaos. And you can see our vehicle storage yard, just what that did to our vehicles. And in one case, we had a very large press, and we had to pump 21 million litres of mud out of the pit underneath the press. But of course, then we needed to wash it with fresh water and repeat a number of times to be able to clean up after that. It was so bad that eventually we also had to get some rescue boats, rescue swimmers on site to be able to recover some of those people that were unfortunately struggling to get out of the site. One of my first responses was to inform the president of Toyota Corporation in Japan. I going to tell him what had happened. And I showed him that we would follow the priority sequence of, first of all, looking after the safety and welfare of all our employees, and then we look at the communities around us, particularly the dealers and suppliers that were located around our area, and then only as our third priority, recover our operations. This was something that I learned just a few years before that when we had a small disaster, and I was really struck by the fact that a executive from a multinational company, a global multinational company, could inform me that I needed to look after the people first, then the communities, don't worry about the operations, we can deal with that later. So I was very encouraged with that, and we had obviously implemented that approach and mindset straight away. Access to the plant on the 13th, which was the next day, was really restricted, but I was able to get onto site. We had about 50 centimetres of mud left in the area, and it was a surreal experience walking around the plant with just seeing the devastation and really wondering how we are going to recover from it and what is the extent of the damage. Clinics, ablutions, offices, everything was quite, well, it was destroyed. So walking around in gumboots on that day, just seeing the devastation, contemplating what is this going to mean for us, what does it mean for the entire supply chain that is so into us and the number of people impacted. We didn't know how long it would take. There were times when it felt like forever, there were times when it felt like perhaps we could recover within about 8 months. In the first few weeks, they were particularly difficult. We had no fresh water, we had no electricity, all the substations had been knocked out. We had no cell phone communication, so we couldn't even call each other on cell phones because all the towers in the whole area had been knocked out. We had no sanitation. You can imagine how difficult it is to manage people with no sanitation and no IT network. And the workstations and operations had all been destroyed, so that certainly challenged us. The executive team in Japan was really helpful. We had, within a few days, we had visual conferences with our Japan colleagues, and they were talking about how they could support and what the impact really was. And what was really impressive to me was the leadership team never ever asked me in those first few months, how did it happen, or could it have been prevented? They simply said, how can we help? And that's something that I certainly won't forget. To give you some perspective of the impact, we had to scrap and crush 4,249 vehicles. We lost 10.8 million production parts, 25,000 export components, 218 semi-lockdown kits, billions of rands and damages and implanted equipment, and ended up fortunately only losing 104 production days. This was probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, insurance claim on the continent of Africa. So we were able to get the chief executive from Japan responsible for global disaster management, and he said this is the most comprehensive damage we've seen in any plant anywhere in the world, even worse than the tsunami that struck Japan in 2011. I happened to be living in Japan in 2011, but this was the worst day I'd ever experienced. Of course, we started contacting our employees, ensuring that they were safe, and made sure that we were very fortunate none of them lost their lives. 290 homes were damaged. We put a program in place to support the recovery of the homes, supplying water, food, until some of those supply routes could be established in the communities. We also supported the rebuilding of the schools in the area, also provided water. We had 10,000 litre water tankers driving around the communities, distributing water, food hampers, clothes, And we worked also very closely with a few suppliers that were in our area and the two dealers to help them to recover their operations. One of the most important decisions that we took really early on was that we would rebuild our operations and that no one would lose their jobs. So to galvanize everyone around this vision of the fact that we would recover, we created a slogan, rebuilding better together. I want to see if I can get to that, thank you. And we knew we had to rebuild our entire plant. This was not a recovery operation, this was literally rebuilding the plant. In fact, some people said to me later on it would have been easier to build a new plant than to do what we did. We also knew that we needed to target being better than before, to look at every possible opportunity where we could find silver linings in what had happened to us so that our operations could take a big step forward and be better than we were before, and we could create hope and vision for everyone involved. And we needed everyone's involved, all our employees, our suppliers, experts from all over the world. We had affiliated companies from other countries sending experts, sending people, and of course all our employees, city, national government, provincial governments. We had quite a number of learnings from this whole experience. The first one I want to share with you is just the importance of reaching out. So one of our natural tendencies in these situations is to focus inwardly, to try to ensure that all our energy goes into recovering when we have these priority areas. But we ended up inviting a dealer group fairly early on just to explain what had happened and show them the impact. Of course, we couldn't tell how long it would take to recover. And the impact was so positive that we decided to invite suppliers, people from the city, the province, national government, and that ended up having a really big impact on us. We got a lot of support, Office of Technical Support, Office of Expertise, and being able to share that burden became very meaningful for us at the time. We thought that taking the focus away from our recoveries would have been a disadvantage, but in fact it worked out to be quite the opposite. So reaching out and sharing ended up having a very positive impact, and we learned a lot from that whole experience. The second one was communication. Communication always comes up in these types of situations, but being open and transparent about what we knew, what we didn't know, became absolutely critical. So fortunately, this is post-COVID, so everyone was used to video conferencing. We did a lot of update sessions with everyone involved, and that became a very core element of our recovery, but also building that understanding and support for what we were going through. One of the first things we realized was that we needed to talk to our customers. So there were strong rumors that we would close, we'd move to another country, it would never recover, and they were rife in the communities, rife around the whole country. So we needed to let our customers know that we were in this position, that we had every intent to rebuild and recover from a situation that we would be back. So my marketing team came to me with this concept, and Mike, you're going to cringe a little bit because these are not the best production values. This was a cut and paste TV commercial put together in a few days just to send out the message. So let's take a look. I hope we can take a look. No. I'm sorry, I don't know need. It looks like I can't get the...
But we South Africans have a unique spirit. A spirit of resilience, a spirit of pulling together, a spirit to get us through anything. And we'll soon be back to building Mzansi's favorite vehicles in the same spirit we always have.
So that was really well received. We were quite surprised, but our customers really understood, and we had a lot of loyalty and prepared to wait until we had recovered. One of the next big learnings for us was taking some critical decisions really quickly. One of the first ones was that we would crush almost 4,500 brand new vehicles, Lexus, Toyota, because we recognized that even though there was and attempt to repair them because they had sat under the mud for 8 to 12 hours, there was always the risk that 6 months, 12 months, 18 months later, there could be some fault, problem, safety risk. Insurance wouldn't cover everything, so I immediately took the decision, would even take the dealer's stock that had been damaged, put everything into one yard and crush everything. So that I could say there would be no flood-damaged vehicles anywhere in the country and build that trust with our customers. We made some quick decisions, of course, to announce that we wouldn't lose jobs, that we'd be rebuilding. We made some quick decisions about requesting support from government. Of course, I needed a lot of cash flow support from our parent company, and that was forthcoming. The other learning was around empowering people. Of course, we needed to set some quick direction, be very open and transparent about communication, inclusive, invite everyone to come and see what happened, but then at the same time, empowering them to support us. So we had so many interesting experiences where suppliers, other expertise would be joining into our teams. There were no job descriptions. There was not who knows who needs to do what, but they just fitted in because they were part of the team. We had graduate trainees that had only finished varsity, joined us in January of that year. April was a disaster. By July, they were leading big teams. So it was an amazing experience. We often say internally, the 6 months experiencing what we did was worth 6 years of experience in terms of developing their capabilities. So that was a big win for us. Resourcefulness is really important as well. You know, we have quite a few examples of that. We needed to source equipment, replacement equipment from all over the world. We ended up having to order just under 100,000 pieces of equipment. That could be anything from a complete piece of machinery, a robot, for example, or a control panel, to parts of the equipment. The challenge was that some of the lead times was 1.5 to 2 years. We knew that if we waited for that equipment to arrive, we would never survive. That would be into our manufacturing operations and impact obviously on many livelihoods. So we decided to find ways in which we could repair it. And one of the tough challenges was repairing the control units. A lot of electronics, control boards, so we ended up finding a way of using toothbrushes to clean all the electronic components with distilled water, electronic spray, repeating the process a number of times, and we ended up with only about a 30% failure rate. We did it again, and we ended up being able to run. In fact, we only finished installing the final replacement parts that was sent to us just last month in April of 2024, so 2 years later. Without that, we would never have been able to recover. Experts told us it would be absolutely impossible. But I think that's the resilience and the spirit of South Africans. It was really a small miracle. We ended up recovering within 4 months, 104 production days we lost. And of course then the challenge was, how do we let our customers know that we're back? So let's take a look at the commercial that we then flighted. I'm not technically capable, obviously. I think the price of toothbrushes will tell you. sound's not playing, but we put together a commercial essentially telling everyone that we were back, and that was very well received. And I think there was just a recognition of the fact that we've been through quite a tough time, and we ended up building a lot of loyalty. So it was something that came out as a silver lining from the whole experience. We are, of course, very grateful for the tremendous support we received from affiliates all over the world, from our parent company, obviously our employees who sacrificed a lot to get us to that point. But we know that this challenge is going to be indelibly etched into our memory, into our culture as a company now, and we're taking very deliberate steps to make sure we don't forget what we're doing and what we've made a success. So let me just talk a little bit about the second story, which is a very brief one, and it's a comment that I'd like to make about South Africa, about where we are as a country. I think there are many people that are debating whether we're at a tipping point, whether we're on the edge of some sort of precipice and we can fall headlong into some turmoil, or we will pull back into some relative safety and significant wide-ranging transformation. I think we are at a precarious situation, but how we respond at this time, I think, is really important. I'm involved in an initiative between B4SA, Business for South Africa, which is a division of BUSA, and the Office of the Presidency and the President, to look at how we can support and partner with government to really turn the corner. How do we implement some interventions that can move the needle, attract investment and growth, and instill confidence in the country, our consumers, in the business community as well. One of the concerns, of course, from a business point of view, is that we end up being complicit in the lack of progress with government. If they're not committed, we could be seen as supporting this, even supporting a political party. At the end of the day, the decision we took was that the consequences of doing nothing are even more severe. So the approach was that we would just focus on a few key focal areas. We'd make some meaningful impact in a few areas and ensure that we could move the needle on some distinct interventions. So the focus was on energy, transport and logistics, and crime and corruption. I've been involved as one of the CEO sponsors for the transport and logistics area, but I just want to share with you just a quick few facts about where we are and how we've progressed in the last 9 to 12 months. First of all, we have 130 CEOs that have signed pledges to support. We have been able to garner 170 million rand in funding, and we've deployed 350 experts into these 3 focal areas, most of them going to Eskom and Transnet. So there's a significant support from a resource, from an expertise, project management point of view into these 3 areas. Some quick remarks on energy. We've already generated an additional 6 gigawatts of renewable energy that's been added to the grid. Another 6 gigawatts will be added this year. Load shedding is down 61% compared to the same period last year. Planned maintenance of the fleet at Eskom is up 3-fold. More importantly, there's been some very important structural reforms. The National Transmission Company has been established, the board's been put in place, the Energy Regulation Bill is about to be passed and implemented, and this is going to pave the way for wheeling agreements to be put in place a little bit later in the year. The target is the 3rd quarter of this year. And none of these big changes, private sector participation, policy reforms, skilling up the employees, would have happened if it wasn't for this crisis. I'm not suggesting that the crisis is good, but that we're seeing some significant shifts that we will reap the benefits in the next 5 to 10 years to come. On the transport and logistics side, we've invested 700 million in some of the key corridors. The freight logistics roadmap has been approved. An infrastructure manager has been put in place. The private sector participation framework has already been established, it's been developed. And this is going to open up significant opportunities for the ports and the rail networks. Waiting times for ships in Anchorage is down 36%. We have 45% fewer ships in Anchorage. The freight rail tonnages have now stabilized and we're starting to see them improve. And the big challenge is still remaining is that we need to significantly invest in some new infrastructure in the port and the rail side. On the crime and corruption side, there's been a 65% reduction in the criminal activities on the Northern Corridor. For those of you familiar with it, that's the corridor that supplies coal nationally, and it's been an important element for us. There's a new initiative to modernise the 10111 command centre. There's a pilot project on the moment with that. Investments have been made into a new forensics lab that's been established, and the priority is now to capacitate the National Prosecuting Authority and the Hawks. So my feeling is that we're turning the corner. There's fundamental reform happening. I'm not suggesting that we're out of the woods yet, but of course there's a lot of progress. And progress that 5 years ago we would have never thought would be possible. So whilst the slogan of rebuilding better together may have been an internal Toyota progress slogan, I think it's also something that we can apply to South Africa. We need to work together. We need to rebuild to be better than before. Not back to 30 years ago, but rebuilding something that's new, something that can take us forward and address the many, many challenges we have. And it is going to take everyone to support it. We do have an amazing country, we have incredible people, but the worst thing that can happen is that people just sit and watch on the sidelines and do nothing. It's easy to find fault, to criticize, but what we really need to do is collaborate in ways that we've experienced during the flood recovery, collaborate in ways that we've now experienced with this B4SA initiative. And if we all make a small little bit of impact in the communities in which we're involved, we can really turn things around. Proactively engaging, being transparent and open with our communication. We have a lot of talent, we have a lot of goodwill in the country, and we have a tremendously resilient nation. And often in times of crisis, we can really achieve some breakthroughs. I'm seeing some of those breakthroughs happening, and that can really have a lasting impact and a positive impact for future generations. So to all my classmates of 1984, I think we're at that stage in life where we can make a difference. We can put back in our communities, towns, businesses. So let's all find a way of doing something that benefits the communities around us and leave a legacy for the next generation. And we can also remember, it's not so much about how we started, but it is about how we finish. Thank you very much for listening. So I've been asked to just allow an opportunity for some Q&A. Is there anybody that would like to ask any questions? We certainly never foresaw that we'd be able to do that. And you know, in any business, cash flow becomes the critical issue. If the recovery takes too long, you end up in a very precarious situation that essentially means that you're not going to survive. We obviously have a lot of skills and resources inside the company around project management. I think part of our success was the culture we had developed, the skills and the approach. There was tremendous teamwork, lots of people putting up their hand and just doing what they thought was possible. But I think it really was because of the collaborative approach. If we as a company had only tried to recover on our own, it would have taken years, quite frankly. We didn't always foresee what some of those breakthroughs would look like. The toothbrush example is one of them. But you know, with every different challenge, we found a solution. One of the interesting stories is one of those pieces is what's called a press cushion. Press cushion sounds very soft, but it weighs 16 tons. There's hydraulics embedded into the cushion, and that was cracked as a result of it. We ended up air freighting this press cushion to get in time so that we could recover. You know, so there were lots of them, and it didn't fit into the cargo plane. So we had lots of challenges like that, and we just needed to tackle it one by one and make sure that 2,500 to 3,000 people on the site every single day were all very, very focused and aligned on what needed to happen. And as we started opening up the different production lines, we celebrated each step so that we could eventually to get to that point. But I agree with you, 104 days was remarkable. Looking back, I'm still not sure how we did it. Any other questions? Thank you.
You mentioned the support you got from Japan around the world. Did you ever hear anything from your fellow competitors in South Africa?
Yes, in fact, we're very fortunate. As an automotive manufacturing group, we actually have a very close rapport with each other, sharing more industry-related issues, and I shared it with them. In fact, they asked me to come and present what had happened, and many of them offered support, offered us even to send some parts into their operations so that they could manufacture for us. We ended up not needing that, and there were compatibility issues, but the support was very, very positive. We didn't end up getting specific expertise from them, but they were right behind us, and certainly concerned that if that had happened to them, how would they be able to recover? I think that was probably more the discussion. So let's go to the third row.
Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to find out if the dam involved, I know it's one every 200 years, but have they done anything to make sure that that doesn't happen again?
So I think the question is, could we ever be in this position again? And of course, the insurance company has made sure that we make sure that we are insurable, otherwise we would have to move. So there are a few very important aspects to it. What I did was I put in place what we now continually call 3 lines of defense. The first line is the infrastructure around us, which includes the dam. So right now those sluice gates are still open, so the dam actually can't fill up, but we are working very closely with them that if they were to rebuild that wall, how they're going to do it and how they're going to manage the dam. It's a national asset and it needs to be managed as such. The bank of the river Burn has been re-established, reinforced so it can't be washed away, and that was one of the first requirements we had. So that's been done. And then they are busy deepening all of the canals, because a lot of that area, this is very similar in cities around South Africa where the infrastructure is not keeping up with the development. That's all in progress. And then we have our second line of defense is what we do by ourselves. So we're protecting all our key equipment, like our compressors, substations, our vehicle storage areas. We've had projects to ensure that those are all protected. And then inside each production environment, we've already completed projects to protect if something gets through the first and second line of defense. So about a month ago, we had a level 5 warning as a result of very, very heavy rain, not a drop on our site. I'm very confident that that will not happen again. Sorry. Okay. No, it was an obvious focus area for us. In the middle of that.
It looks like you had to make quite a lot of very serious decisions. What was the decision-making process involved? How many people support you in making these tough calls?
So we have a lot of autonomy as a business operation in South Africa. Obviously, I have a leadership team of 8 of us, and we work very, very closely. Some of the decisions were some decisive decisions that I made, and everybody immediately, intuitively knew it was the right thing to do. Others we really had to debate. Of course, when it came to funding issues, we needed to get support from our parent company. But I've certainly never experienced it before. We asked for eye-watering numbers of money, and they approved it within 4 days. So I think it became a small team making the critical decisions. But at the end of the day, our recovery was actually the smaller decisions made in each of the operations. And that we had to delegate, we had to empower everyone to do what they felt was appropriate and right. Because without that, 100,000 decisions had to be made, essentially, for each piece of equipment. And that was our entire team. So I think certainly in the beginning, even though President Ramaphosa had been very direct in instructing his team that this is an important approach that needs to be taken, there was a little bit of history during COVID in 2022. There was a very successful support from business, and I think based on that success, he had a level of confidence that this could be possible. I think we need to recognize that with the history of the incumbent government, they've always been fairly cynical about business in South Africa. And that took a little bit of time. But his team took a lot longer. So the beginning interactions were very defensive, because obviously we were pointing out that this was broken, and seriously broken, that we were heading for a catastrophe. We had already forecast, for example, in April last year, that our transport logistics infrastructure would fall down, and we experienced that in December last year. But that wasn't a well understood view at the time. But over time, the more we established that we were here to partner, we had to support, we were very careful about going into any media environment of criticizing the process, and we worked very closely with various government departments. That report started to improve. We got a lot better in our constructive discussions, and that worked. I think it worked very well, and I think it's changed, hopefully permanently, the view of the South African government about business, and how yes, we can have partnership and collaboration. I think on the one hand, there's a view that sometimes government abdicates and requires business to pick up the pieces, but I think in this particular way, we found a good sweet spot of how we could provide support, but not get involved. We could not take ownership for Eskom's performance. We could not take ownership for Transnet's performance, but we could provide research, data, scientific facts on what needed to be done, how things needed to be structured, try and influence policy, provide some thought leadership. And that became more and more appreciated over time when they started to see the benefits of what was happening. So I think that's where we are at the moment. How that will translate into the next administration is a little bit difficult to tell, but I don't think there'll be too much of a stumbling block there at all, because everyone realizes, it doesn't matter what coalition is eventually established, that these key areas are important, and the progress that's made has been constructive. So I do suspect that we'll take a little bit of a step back in realigning and normalizing the relationship with whoever the new team is, and we'll accelerate from there. But I do think that the policy reforms are already in place, and they won't be limited at all. It's the execution that I would say might take a bit longer. Any other questions? Oh, thank you.
How successful have you been in influencing the work ethic of the Japanese work culture in South Africa, and how do you measure your productivity to your plant, say, in Japan? And to what extent have you possibly improved it with your experience from Japan, which I'm sure you came to South Africa? They definitely are unique.
That's a challenging question. So we have a number of training programs that help us to provide the experience and the ways of thinking to our local team. We have quite an aggressive approach to also dispatching people to Japan to live there and work there, and that helps to embed an appreciation of what is possible. I think often in South Africa we tend to accept a level of mediocrity, we tend to accept a level of non-adherence to rules. We tend to think in a way that's not that disciplined. And so I think that's really helped us. And of course, everyone in leadership in our business has been through that training, through that experience, and we keep drilling that down over and over, and I see that's one of my key goals to do. we have a very data-based approach to comparing ourselves to other plants around the world. So we have an exact index, we know exactly what our productivity is. And I'll say to you right now, I can land a vehicle in Europe cheaper than any other Toyota plant in the world. Yes, we have a bit of an advantage with the free trade agreement, but that is what's going to keep us continuously investing in South Africa. And that's what we need to keep reminding the authorities about. It is about competitiveness. We are competing on a global stage. As an automotive industry, we wouldn't be here if we could only support the South African market. We need the volumes and we need the scale. And the beauty about it is that the fact that we export means that South African customers benefit because they get all of those advantages from a quality and a cost point of view. So we are doing well, but it's a continuous process. Everybody is trying to be more competitive. Everyone's trying to find smarter ways of working, trying to find those small incremental improvements. And so it's a very, very competitive environment. We take a measurement once a year, every year, and we have a new initiative every year to make sure we keep going down that line. So yes, that's I think very much part of our success, but it has to be involved. We have this term in Japanese called Kaizen, which means continuous improvement. And we need to understand that we have to continuously find smaller ways, continuously improve, and that's built into the psyche. Unfortunately, when they walk out of our doors, they are in a different situation, and the challenge is to keep reinforcing it because it's not reinforced as soon as they leave our property. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We apologize for
Mr. Kirby, Mr. Butler told me that you are the President and CEO of Toyota South African Motors. I'm not sure what that means, but it sounds pretty important. I know that you are an old grey and that you are from the class of 1984. I will be in the class of 2035, and when I grow up, I want to be a Springbok rugby player. Until then, I can look forward to lots of exciting trips with my friends in our school buses, which are all Toyotas. I've been in one, and you are doing a good job. Keep it up. Matthew has a gift for you. Thank you for speaking here today. Everybody enjoyed it very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Andrew. And for those that are interested in the tour of the Grey, 12 o'clock, neath the tower at the high school. Thank you very much for your attendance here, and also thank you to the Toyota dealers that have also made an effort to come here today. Thank you very much.